Great. Well, welcome everybody to this sponsored webinar. A couple of quick announcements, NRBS related announcements. The biggie, of course, is our conference is coming up on the 26th and 27th of September. It is virtual, so you can join us from wherever you are in the world. And if you register before August 15th, we have an early bird special. So be sure to do that, and there's lots of interesting people will be presenting. Semi-related to that, we do have the NRBS podcast, Healthy Brain, Happy Body. And the first of our conference, we're interviewing the conference presenters, and the first of those was released this morning. That would be Daedalus Hyde, who will be talking about EEG, EEG biofeedback, and the ethics involved in that. So we all should realize we've got ethics that we should be concerned with when we're working with clients. But I want to spend most of our time, of course, with our speaker, and that is Dr. Mitchell Sadar. He's a distinguished licensed psychologist with a really impressive career that's spanned over 40 years. I could spend the hour talking about it. It's worth talking with him about it. He has a lot of great stories. His extensive experience and expertise in the field have led him to make significant contributions in the area of psychology, particularly in the areas of neurofeedback and biofeedback. Dr. Sadar is BCIA certified in both neurofeedback and HRV biofeedback, and he serves as a BCIA approved mentor in biofeedback. Since 2015, Dr. Sadar has served as the president of the board of the Northeast Region Biofeedback Society, and he's been instrumental in advancing the practice of biofeedback and neurofeedback, not just in the region, but I would argue globally. His outstanding work and leadership in the field have been recognized with the prestigious Joel F. Lubar Award, the AAPB Catalyst Leader Award, and the Biofeedback Federation of Europe's Award for Education. So I don't want to take up any more of his time. He's going to be speaking today about ILF. And if you have any questions, just put them into the chat. I'll be monitoring that, and we will get to them as best we can near the end. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Saul. Hello, all. Thanks for being here. I am happy to see that there is interest in ILF. I am presenting this on behalf of the B-Medic company as a part of the NRBS sponsorship series. B-Medic is the company, and Bernard van der Noth is the engineer that allows ILF training to happen. He is the person that is behind the hardware and the software that allows for the ILF. I want to make very, very clear that what you are about to hear is my viewpoint, my impressions of the ILF, its development, and its application. I was initially trained in frequency band neurofeedback by the authors in the late 90s. I was also training by other people at that time, but it was the author approach that for me at that time made the most sense. So I remained in that particular camp. And then when they developed and began to offer the ILF, which I think was about 2007 or so, I watched it from afar, and then in, I think, 2009, I got the training, and I think we, Sadar Psychological and Sports Center became one of the only clinics, certainly in the US, to offer both frequency band training and ILF training also. So again, what I'm about to talk about today, I will give an overview of what ILF is for those of you who aren't familiar with it. I hope to address some of the controversial issues that have surrounded ILF, and at the end of it, I will talk a little bit about how I feel ILF and frequency band training can be combined, and I would really argue in a way that they actually should be, and I think that there is a lot of future opportunity there for research and things that will benefit the neurofeedback field in general. For reasons of the two, ILF and frequency band, having radically different paradigms, the two for many years were not doing a lot of communication. But I really think the time has arrived for that communication to happen, and I hope what I'm about to do here is kind of the beginning of that. All right. So, the ILF theoretical model of the CNS, that is what underlies their application. It's theoretical, but I think we must appreciate, or my view is, every neurofeedback approach has a theoretical model. No one knows what this beautiful organ is really doing. No one really knows, how it works. So we generate theoretical models to help us as we go about our work, but we need to appreciate that it's all theory. Theirs is based on that there are three primary categories of dysregulation. Now, those of you who are frequency band providers, and who in particular learned frequency band from Sadar Psychological, will see that there's a lot of overlap between the approach of a frequency band training and ILF. This is one of them, and it's a critical one. It's a basic one. It's a foundational one. These three categories are the physiological arousal. Is the person's brain subject to or susceptible to over-arousal, under-arousal, or both? The instabilities, these are symptoms where it's like a switch gets thrown, and the symptom manifests itself for like 0 to 100 miles an hour in a couple seconds. And then there's also localized dysfunction. But the ILF is aimed first and largely at the first two, with the belief that when these two are optimized, are working as they should, many functions will improve, many symptoms will decrease. Their approach, I will say this, getting in, one of the good things about ILF, there are many, is that it is a relatively easy form of neurofeedback to get into. There's always talk about the learning curve getting into the field of neurofeedback, and how it is a very steep learning curve. And certainly that's the case for most frequency band training. The learning curve for ILF, it's there, but it's not as steep of a curve. So if you are a person listening to this who isn't a neurofeedback provider, and you have heard how difficult it is getting into the field learning wise, this could be for you a way to consider getting in to the field. Their approach at the beginning, when you're first training a patient, they postulate a choice between two protocols. One's aimed at arousal dysregulation, which most people begin with. The other is aimed at the instabilities, which you would use first if one or more of the instabilities is a primary issue. And then there are times when there are both, and then you would find a way to use both. But again, I mean, it really simplifies the early selection of training protocols. This is the model on which it's a model of the CMS on which ILF training is based, and you will see the reference there to Susan Othmer. I will tell you that I have great respect for the Othmers, for Susan Othmer's clinical abilities, and for their contributions to the frequency band field, but then also the ILF field. So, but I'm not going to get in to this in detail. I just wanted you to see that they do put out a simplified hierarchical model of CNS functioning. The T4 P4 protocol is about the physiological calming, and remember, the authors were dealing with pretty severely impacted patients, a lot of them with, I mean, even before there was a lot of talk about complex developmental trauma, the authors were seeing people who would certainly qualify for that diagnosis. We find that at the Sadar psychological that the ILF approach is very beneficial to many folks with trauma backgrounds. So if you're a person with interest, or if your clientele is made up of people with significant trauma backgrounds, ILF is a thing for your consideration. Our view is, even when we're doing frequency band, is that most of the people coming in to our office and to the offices we have trained and then so forth, most offices, the issue is over activation. This obviously is because estimates range from 60 to 75% of our neurons are excitatory, just from an evolutionary viewpoint, and the pace of modern life is increasingly in information overload, so that kind of jacks us all up. And things like the smartphone has become a part of our life, so that the time that we really allow ourselves to deactivate has decreased. And we find that ILF is particularly useful with people who are prone to over activation. And the stability training, these are the folks, the kind of the big one of these is obviously seizures, but we also put into this panic attacks, migraine headaches, asthma attacks, rage reaction, and severe mood swings. If any of these is present, you will most likely begin with a T3 T4 protocol versus a T4 P4. There are, of course, other instability symptoms, but they are lesser in their intensity. And then, as the ILF training goes, once you have reached what you feel is the maximum benefit from the initial protocols, but there remains benefits to be had, they outline other specific protocols aimed at specific sorts of functions. The T4FP2 is for emotional regulation, the T4O2. This is as this slide says, is for deep calming. We find that particularly people whose trauma dates back to times when it was pre-verbal, or they were 2 years old or so, very, very young. We see that T4O2 can augment the T4P4. Those of you who are frequency band providers, you know that Seaburn Fisher has an Indian Ridge protocol aimed at real calming, and I think that protocol and this protocol are very, very similar. Again, the ILF folks kind of look at the 4 quadrants, and it just gives you a little direction, if you're dealing with, if you want physical calming or sensory integration, you're looking at T4P4. If you're looking at calming emotional reactivity, helping a person feel safe, being better able to express their emotions, it would be the right frontal area, T4FP2. The left frontal area is about the mental calming, planning, so forth. In truth, the left, the back, gets trained very little in my experience and in my knowledge of people using ILF, but you should know that it can have effects upon awareness and processing of detail. But you can see how things here are kind of simplified. I mean, you're with your patient and you assess their issues, and then you have a template that really drives your protocol selection. They also use, other than T3, T4, they also use interhemispheric placements, P3, P4, really for sensory processing, but it can also facilitate relaxation. It can also, have a positive effect upon attention. T3, T4, we have talked about. That's a primary protocol. The frontal lobes with F3, F4, or FP1, FP2, these can further benefit emotional control. They can also help with planning, organizing, and with the symptoms of OCD. Now, the ILF training began as a one-channel training. In relatively recent years, I don't know exactly when, the past 5, 6 or so, I lose track of time. It's gone to 2-channel training, and I've taken a more recent ILF course from some folks in Europe. And right now, if you get ILF training from most ILF trainers, you will just get 2-channel training. This is an area where we at Sadar Psychological differ a little bit. Our approach, whether it's frequency band or ILF, is to really try to do no harm. We begin most people, if we're going to do ILF, with 1-channel training. This approach helps a lot of folks. It has helped a lot of folks before the 2-channel was even available. And in our experience, there are fewer unexpected adverse reactions. The 2-channel training is more powerful. I could give examples about that, but it is. And so, because it is, you might get positive results a little quicker, but you also, there's a bigger chance of, as I said, unexpected negatives. And we like to avoid those, particularly in the beginning of a person's training, because if you have a negative result early in training, that can get in the way of continued training. So our approach is to begin with the 1-channel. Now, you should be aware, if you are not, even though it's called infra-low frequency training, it also involves conventional frequency band training. This is typically in the form of inhibit bands that are auto thresholded across the entire 1 to 40 hertz spectrum. If you're a frequency band provider, this is the range that most frequency band training occurs in. This is where all of the research is in frequency band. And so ILF training involves the training of the infra-low signal, but at the same time, the frequency band frequencies from 1 to 40 hertz are also being trained as far as inhibits go. 2-channel training, you should be aware, it's the sum of no, I'm sorry, that's the inhibit bands. The 2-channel training is the difference between the 2 channels, whereas the inhibit bands in the 2-channel is the sum of. These are technical things you don't necessarily need to know about, but I'm just letting you know the differences. Now, here's a very important difference, which has caused a lot of controversy. You may know that traditional frequency band training was based on instrumental or conditioning. It's amplitude training, because the frequencies being trained are cycles per second. You're able to set thresholds where you ask certain frequencies to lower their amplitudes and certain frequency bands to raise them. When you get to ILF, these are frequencies below half a hertz, but frankly, most of the training occurs at 0.1 millihertz and lower. And 1 millihertz is 1 cycle per 1,000 seconds. So you're dealing with frequency waves that are 90 minutes long or longer. These are huge, long waves. And so if you're going to train for 30 minutes, you aren't even through a cycle of an infra-low frequency. And so the question was raised, well, what are you doing? You cannot be training amplitude. There isn't any way that learning theory applies, and learning theory was and is the backbone of the frequency band approach. And so this led many of the frequency band training users to say, ILF, this is really craziness here. So the best that I can get, and let me say, this is nothing that is, I don't think, extremely clear to most people, but the best that I can get is this. You choose an infra-low frequency, say it's 0.1 millihertz. The computer program, it's as if that program is producing the perfect 0.1 millihertz wave. None of our brains are capable of perfection. And so the program begins giving the person feedback as to where they are in relationship to that perfection. Are you here, here, here? And the brain, because the brain's about survival, the brain's about doing the best it can, the brain will adjust. It'll do this, it'll do this, it'll do this. And the exercise of that has a positive effect upon that ILF frequency being tracked. Now, a thing that gets, because of that, the feedback screens or games are also a little bit different. You can use the exact same screens, and the B-Medic system does between their B-Lab frequency band training and their Signet ILF. But in a frequency band, for example, if you're doing one with the cars racing. You want the car to go faster, and you want the sound to be as loud as you can, and you want the image that you're seeing to be as clear as you can, and these reward or reinforce the changes. But in ILF, it's not about rewarding or reinforcing. It's about giving information. So going fast is no better than going slow. Each one of those is giving the brain information to use, and the brain uses it to self regulate. And I think this is one of the main areas of a controversy when the frequency band and the provider looks at the ILF training. But again, it's a different paradigm, it's a different theoretical approach, and you can either come to terms with that or not. But you will see, adjusting the training protocol, there are a lot of places where the ILF training and the frequency band overlap. If you raise the signal that you're tracking, it goes for higher physiological arousal. If you lower it, it's for lower. And that's the same with the frequency band and the ILF. It's very, very similar protocols have been used. I mean, I'm doing things here without realizing it. Anyway, so very similar protocols, although the Infra-Low approach is much more directed and I think in a way simplified. It's the same approach, each as far as the way we train them. In the frequency band approach, you search for the person's optimal reward frequency. So you begin with SMR at 12 to 15, but everybody's SMR is in a 12 to 15, and you begin to lower that if a person's overly aroused, and you look for their optimal reward frequency. In the ILF, it's the optimal response frequency. We can't talk about reward because this isn't about learning theory or operant conditioning, but it's the same process. You train for a little bit, you pause, you ask a person, how are you? You then change the frequency, you train for a little bit, you pause. Are you feeling better? Are you feeling worse? Are you feeling the same? The approach for ILF is pretty regimented. You begin at a certain frequency, you then pause, you go to the next one that they recommend, so on and so forth. So the introduction of ILF and the searching for the optimal response frequency is very, very clear, very clear. And again, It's the same sorts of things between the frequency band and the ILF. And then once you find the optimal response frequency, you then look at increasing the training time. Same rules apply to the frequency band training we teach and the ILF training. If you're observing certain things in your clients, you will raise the frequency you are tracking, and if other things if other things appear, you will lower the frequency. So there are a lot of similarities between the frequency band training and the ILF training. Both, typically is training for 30 minutes as a maximum. Again, that's a typical thing. You begin with a certain training, a certain protocol, and as the benefits level off there, you begin to add protocols. In the ILF approach, you can train up to 5 or 6 of the same different protocols in a single session. There are also rules as to if you move off of T4, P4, T3, T4, and you move to the left, how you adjust what ILF signal you will track. If you move frontally, what ILF you will track. But there are also rules for frequency bands. So a lot of similarities. And as I said, ILF developers said that you can train really up to 5 sites in the same training session. You can either adjust the training time for each depending upon the patient's response, or the default is you train all of the different protocols for the same length of time. Now, here's where I want to spend a little time. I think if you're a frequency band provider, I would ask you to think about bringing Infra-Low Frequency training into your toolbox. The frequency bands are rhythms generated by neurons. The infra-low frequencies are hypothesized to be generated by glia cells. Glia cells support neuronal activity. There are those that say that the higher frequencies ride on the lower, the infra-low frequencies. Siegfried has used the analogy or the metaphor. Training frequency band is like training the waves in the ocean. Training ILF is like training the tides. However you're going to look at this, when you're using one or the other, you are having an impact upon something different. We have found some people respond better to frequency band than to ILF. Some people respond better to ILF than to frequency band. Some people respond best to both. These things can be, and I think should be, used together. I will add this. One of the controversies about, ILF, also is the ILF signal. The ILF signal is very difficult to track. You can't really use any ILF data to evaluate what's going on. There are a lot of reasons for this, which I won't get into now. But what I have found, is you can look at the frequency band signals, and it can give you some indication as to if and how the infra-low signal that you are tracking is having an effect. I could give examples, but I'm running out of time here. Likewise, you can use the results of QEEG ERP evaluations, which tell you where in the brain is not seemingly functioning as well as it could be, and that can help you to choose protocols beyond the basic ILF protocol. So I think that there's a lot of work to be done that can show the benefits of both an ILF and a frequency band approach being available by the same provider. Lastly, I'll say this before I open it up to questions. I want to make sure this gets in here, because we feel, we want more ILF providers to learn frequency band, and we want more frequency band providers to learn ILF. We have first generated an ILF course. It's an ILF course that can be for anybody just coming in to the neurofeedback field who doesn't really know anything about neurofeedback, or there's a part of that because you've learned frequency band and you know the 10-20 system and you have learned a lot of things. You don't need everything. You just need to learn about ILF. So we have what we feel is a relatively short course aimed at frequency band providers that want to learn ILF. And we are going to be beginning that course relatively soon. If you're a frequency band provider who uses a neuroamp, the BMedic neuroamp, if you register for the course by September the 15th, BMedic will give you free access to the Infra-Low software so you can take the course. If you are a person just coming in the field and you don't, have equipment, or if you are a frequency band provider, but you do not have a neuroamp, because again, frequency band is alternating current, infra-low is direct. So you need a special amplifier. If you're one of those and you want to learn the ILF, B Medic will loan you the equipment for the course for free. But in order to get into that course and give everything that you want to learn and see, you should register before the 18th of August. You can register as late as the 28th, and that will get you the equipment before the first practicum, but you're going to need to catch up on some of the videos. Anyway, that's that. Saul, are there any questions?
There are. Thanks, Mitch, so much. There are a few questions in the chat. First, would you, in the same session, train ILF and frequency bands, or would you do them in separate sessions?
Well, I've actually done it both ways. Yeah, I mean, you find different people respond differently, and my opinion, you need to be flexible.
Another question is, how do you know that the brain is stabilized if you're, say, doing the T3 minus T4 training? And when do you move on? Although I would say that that's a question you can ask for any neurofeedback training you're
Well,
doing.
yeah, I'll say this. ILF training, because there's not a lot of data that you can really look at. I'm developing ways that you can look at frequency band to give you a little direction, but it's not, because that's not there. I think people really need to be good clinical observers and have good reports from their patients, because this is patient directed protocols, and so you need to be looking at specific goals, and is your training having the effect that the client and you want, and then as that effect levels off, then you begin to see, should we do anything else?
Okay. Uh, there is a question about getting good impedance measures, but that's something that was suggested is covered in the community Q&As, the MindLink community Q&As, and that's a topic that I think we could spend at least an hour on. Another question about whether you have any recommended literature resources or references, specifically related to the theory about what these infra-low signals are. I know there's an EEG literature on infra-low, which is where this idea comes from, the glial cells comes from, but I don't know if you have any other literature.
Off the top of my head, no. What I would say is you can Google things that have been written by Siegfried Othmer. He is a brilliant theory generator, and he has a lot to say about all of this. Also, Yuri Kropotov has a paper out about the ILF
Hmm.
signal too. But yeah, that's as good as I can give off of the top.
Here's a good question. I'm not sure you want to take this. This is a controversial question, in my opinion, anyway. And it's a question about EEG versus Signet software. Do you have any thoughts about those two approaches, those two
Well,
platforms?
eager is you know, up until just recently was his frequency band. They have just recently begun to talk about and do a little bit of what they're calling, I forget the exact name, but it's in Infra-Low. I don't know that approach very well. I will say this, it's really new, whereas the authors have been doing this since 2007 maybe. So, you know, I know they are Eager has begun to get into it in some way, but I don't know a lot about the particulars there.
There aren't any other questions, but actually, I was curious about something you brought up in your talk. If we have a couple of minutes, and that is the connection between ERPs and Infra-Low. I wonder, could you talk maybe a little bit about that?
Well, I think, as with Q, EEG, looking at the ERPs and where certain ERPs deviate from a database suggests a certain, area in the brain that is not functioning as it should be. And so if you've done your basic, ILF protocols and you haven't gotten all the benefit that you would want, then to target the areas that the ERP analysis suggests would be, I know Andy Mueller, when he does his evaluations, and his are both QEEG and ERP, he generates infra-low frequency protocols that are nothing like the typical, ILF protocols. He's generating them just based upon the information coming from the QEEG RP analysis. I don't know anyone else doing that, and I think more work needs to be done there, to see what are the results of that.
I think also Mark Smith with the Infra-Slow uses QEEGs to determine protocols in some way
Yeah,
too.
we should
Some
say that.
difference between the two of the.
Yeah, the other, there is Mark and his Brain Master, amplifier. It also does a form of infra-low, but you're right. He calls it infra-slow. They don't go as low in the infra-low frequency band as does Signet, but very, very, very similar rationale between the two.
Well, we're just hitting that 1 o'clock times, at least in the Eastern Coast. So thank you all for joining us. I will be interviewing Mitch for the next episode of Healthy Brain, Happy Body, which should be released next Tuesday. So you can all listen to continuation of this conversation. And thank you all for joining us. And of course, thank you, Mitch, so much for presenting on this topic.
You're certainly welcome.